Hey guys, Tony here. I just wanted to go through some basics of the RP Slicer software with you. You can see here I've got a model that I just imported, and so I just wanted to kind of go through some of the real basic settings so you guys could hit the ground running once your Einsteins show up. You may notice that this model looks giant compared to the build platform. That's because I'm printing this on my D4K Pro that I have at home, which has a much smaller build platform than your Einsteins will. So that's why it looks like a massive model. So what I want to really talk about are kind of these four icons that show up when you left click the model. By the way, right click will allow you to rotate the scene to look at it from different angles. That's just kind of the basic way that I usually work. You can right click the model to get different options as well, but if you right click off the model, it just allows you to rotate the scene. So as we look at this, you can notice a few things. One is that it's kind of a strange orientation, teeth down, which we don't want. This has a nice flat bottom to it, so I want to basically flip this to print along this flat surface. And the way that I would do that is this icon up here on the upper right. So if you left click this and grab it, you can see it kind of pulls an arrow out. And what you're doing is you're telling the software that you want this surface to be flat against the print bed. So if I let go at this point, you can see it rotates it and puts it on the area that I selected. So if I want to put this flat on the base of this model, I just select it and make sure that it is along that flat surface, and it will put it flat there for me, which is lovely. The other thing you might notice is that this has a giant base on it. I don't necessarily want to take the time and the extra material that it'll take to create a base this size. So I can fix that really easily. By the way, over here on the left side, you have this calculate cost button. For model resin, it's about $110. So it tells you the cost of basically the material that you'll use for whatever print job you're doing. You have to change this material cost for whatever resin you're using. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's kind of nice to know from time to time. So if I want to get rid of some of this base that's been created, by the way, this upper left icon is also a way that you can move it, but all you really have to do is left click anywhere on the model and it will also do the same thing. So if I want to get rid of some of this base, I'm going to select this lower left icon. I'm going to left click and it allows me to basically get rid of whatever I want on that. So if I want to take it to right about there, I'll let go and it will basically recreate that model, subtracting some of that base off. You can also see you've got this compass that you can grab to use to rotate the model to keep it in the same orientation. An easy way to kind of manipulate things. This last icon on the lower right is if you want to duplicate something. So if I am printing some Flexera crowns for temporaries, for instance, I will usually print multiples of those. If there's going to be a long-term temporary, I want the patient to have, a couple different ones. Things happen over the course of, months when they're in temporaries. So if they lose one, if one breaks, I will always print extras and kind of keep it in their lab pan, just in case they come in one time on a Monday morning and they need a new crown. You already have one that's there and printed, and you don't have to take any extra time to do so. Okay. If I want to get rid of that model, I just right click and delete it. Okay. So this model is now ready to go. If we look at our calculate cost, it's going to cost us about $2.50 to print that, but it is ready to roll. The other thing is the printer software doesn't necessarily love the fact that you don't have supports on a perfectly flat model. It will kind of tell you that that's going to be a problem. It will not be, so don't worry about that. You can totally all day print models in this flat orientation, so that's pretty cool as well. All right. All right, let's dig a little deeper into how to handle situations where when you import the models into your software, they weren't previously based or made watertight. And so the software will do this for you, but sometimes it'll do it to where it'll make things a little bit more difficult to print. So if you look at this model on the left, this is what the software has done to try to close up that mesh for us to make it printable. It gave us kind of a triangular shaped area. Obviously, that is going to be very difficult to print flat like we would like to. But what we can do to get around this is actually really simple. So the first thing that I'll do in this case is I will rotate it to try to get it as flat as I can on the platform. Now we're not going to be able to get this completely flat, but the closest we can get it will be helpful for how I normally do this. You see that red bar? That means part of my model is outside the build plate. So I'm just going to tweak that in. So I'm just going to try to work with this just a little bit to get it once again as flat as I can. Really, I'm looking at the occlusal plane and trying to make sure that that's pretty flat to the build plate. Then I'm going to use this kind of slicer tool to take away part of the bottom of that model to make it a little more flat and get rid of that triangular area that's kind of causing us to sit wonky. And as we've done that, we've made it much, much better, but we still have areas where we have some spots that aren't completely flat. So what I will do with this, just because I don't want any chance of there being a print failure in this, is I will go ahead and add support. So this support generation tool over here on the left. And if you look, I have decreased the minimal support height to 2 millimeters for this. Now you can change this to whatever. Obviously, the taller those supports are, the longer this print is going to take and the more material it's going to use. So I have mine at 2 millimeters for this, and I'm just going to hit generate for selected, and you'll see it makes a really low profile set of supports that I can use to print this successfully. So instead of having a flat model, we just basically have these teeny tiny supports that are going to make this printable for us. Now, a couple things about supports in this software. So if we look at the supports here on the bottom of this model, each point you can see represents one of the supports and where it is on that model. If you go into advanced settings, there are all sorts of things that you can change with these. I generally don't mess with those. The one thing that I do mess with a lot is this edit support points. And when you click on that, it shows you all the specific actual contact points for those supports on the model. And if you go and left click on any one of those supports, it will remove it. If you click back on an empty space, it will add. So you can add as many as you want in here if you feel like it's not as well supported as you would like. Any place that it has this pink, you can actually add supports, okay? The other thing you can do is if you don't like the position of a support is if you hit control and left click, you can take a support and move it around, okay? So this is not so important for models. This does become important when you start to print crowns and you really want to make sure that the incisal edge, for instance, is well supported. So you may want to adjust the position of those supports. I'll make a video on that a little bit later. But once you're done, by the way, this tip thickness, I usually keep it at about 0.4. 0.4 means that those supports break off really easily. And for a model, you can do it with your hands. In this case, they're so short, I probably won't even bother removing them. I'll just leave them on. But if you do have taller supports and you want to remove them, 0.4 makes it really easy for you to do that. I'm going to hit apply and we are ready to roll. Now you can see that's so low profile that it doesn't even really add anything to our print time. Our model here on the right is actually our wax up is going to print. It's going to take more time to print that one than it will to print this pre-op model. Get out there and print.